How is it that gravity is so strong that it can hold all the oceans, buildings, and people stuck to the underside of the ball Earth, but so weak that it allows birds, bugs, smoke, and balloons to casually evade its grips completely? How is it that gravity holds our bodies clung to the underside of a ball Earth, but yet we can easily raise our legs and arms, walk or jump, and feel no such constant downward pulling force? How is it that gravity can cause planets to revolve elliptical orbits around a single center of attraction? Ellipses by nature require two foci, and the force of gravitation would have to regularly increase and decrease to keep planets in constant orbit and prevent pulling them into direct collision courses. Einstein's theory of relativity and the entire heliocentric model of the universe hinge upon Newton's law of gravitation. Heliocentrists claim that the Sun is the most massive object in the heavens, more massive even than the Earth, and therefore the Earth and other planets, by law, are caught up in the Sun's gravity and forced to orbit perpetual circles and ellipses around it. They claim that gravity also somehow allows people, buildings, the oceans, and all of nature to exist on the underside of their ball Earth without falling off. Now, even if gravity did exist, why would it cause both planets to orbit the Sun and people to stick to the Earth? Gravity should either cause people to float in suspended circular orbits around the Earth, or it should cause the Earth to be pulled and crashed into the Sun. What sort of magic is gravity that it can glue people's feet to the ball Earth while causing Earth itself to revolve ellipses around the Sun? The two effects are very different, yet the same cause is attributed to both. Furthermore, this magnetic-like attraction of massive objects gravity is purported to have can be found nowhere in the natural world. There is no example in nature of a massive sphere or any other shaped object which, by virtue of its mass alone, causes smaller objects to stick to or orbit around it. There is nothing on Earth massive enough that it can be shown to cause even a dust bunny to stick to or orbit around it. Try spinning a wet tennis ball or any other spherical object with smaller things placed on its surface, and you will find that everything falls or flies off, and nothing sticks to or orbits around it. To claim the existence of a physical law without a single practical evidential example is hearsay, not science. Newton also theorized, and it is now commonly taught, that the Earth's ocean tides are caused by gravitational lunar attraction. If the Moon is only 2,160 miles in diameter, and the Earth 8,000 miles, however, using their own math and law, it follows that the Earth is 87 times more massive, and therefore the larger body should attract the smaller to it, and not the other way around. If the Earth's greater gravity is what keeps the Moon in orbit, it is impossible for the Moon's lesser gravity to supersede the Earth's gravity at Earth's sea level, where its gravitational attraction would even further out-trump the Moon's. Not to mention the velocity and path of the Moon are uniform, and should therefore exert a uniform influence on the Earth's tides, when in actuality the Earth's tides vary greatly. Furthermore, if ocean tides are caused by Moon's gravitation, how is it that lakes, ponds, and other smaller bodies of standing water remain outside the Moon's grasp, while the gigantic oceans are so affected? Heliocentrists claim the ball Earth is perpetually spinning on its axis at a mind-numbing 1,038 miles per hour, or 19 miles per second, and somehow people, animals, buildings, oceans, and other surface phenomena can stick to the underside of the spinning ball without falling or flying off. Take a ride on the Gravitron at your local amusement park, however, and notice how the faster it spins, the more you are pushed away from the center of spin, not towards it. Even if the centripetal, inward pulling force, of gravity did exist, which it does not, the centrifugal, outward pushing force, of the ball Earth's supposed 19 mile per second spin would also exist and have to be overcome, yet neither of these opposing forces have ever been shown to have any existence outside the imaginations of heliocentric scientists.
This is Star Talk.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
So
it
did
is-
I accidentally ask a deeper question than I meant to?
Yeah, no, you were meant to ask deep questions
Apparently I
in
was.
life. So to say, what is it? I think Einstein, in an Einsteinian answer, we would say gravity is the curvature of space and time. And objects will follow the curvature of space-time, and we interpret that as a force of gravity. That's probably the best answer I can give to a what is gravity question, or
Okay.
why is there gravity. That's the best I can do there. I think that's a good start. And I can also say that Einstein noted that matter tells space how to curve, space tells matter how to move.
Yeah, so that was Uncle Neil. And so what was Neil actually saying there? Okay, he was saying that he doesn't actually know what dropity is. Has no idea what dropity is. Okay, he said he can describe it. He can, what it does to other things. Basically, it makes things fall. We can do that. Yeah, he can measure it, and they can predict with it. If you let go of something, it'll drop. Well, okay, that's cool. But he's saying that gravity is a curvature of space-time. Yeah. So that when matter is in space, it curves this thing called space-time, but yet they still don't know what the actual thing is that is dropity. Okay. So this is Isaac Newton, and his idea was that two objects, right, will exert, with a mass, will exert a mutually attractive force, yeah, proportional to the mass of each object. Okay, so you can see there that the moon is being attracted with a greater force. Was it the greater force? Oh yeah, the moon is being attracted by a greater force, and the Earth is attracting the moon. Well, you get the picture anyway. And this is Isaac Newton. Now he formulated his ideas, with this huge tome called Principia Mathematica. Yeah, massive book in which he created a whole branch of mathematics. A new branch of calculus, right, to support his claims of this force. Yeah, and it's been hailed for like 200 years as a masterpiece of mathematical perfection. Okay, but once we got sort of new technology or newer technology, they started to realize that his theory didn't really hold up. These calculations weren't right. So that's why Einstein had to come along, which means that everything in that book was bullshit. Seriously, if it didn't work, it's bullshit. I could come up with my banana theory, okay, that will tell the movements of these planet things because of the shape of the banana. Yeah, I can extrapolate the movement of the planets from the shape of the banana. Well, it's possible actually, because the shape of the banana is down to the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, and so are the shapes of everything else in this universe. So I could come up with some maths that would mean that the shape of a banana will predict the movement of the planets. But it would be wrong, and it would be bullshit, yeah? Just like Newton. So this is what replaced Newton's ideas, yeah? It was Albert Einstein saying that the presence of matter warps space, or warps the fabric of space-time. This is something he came up with, space-time. Right? It's very important, that. Okay, so literally the lines of space actually curves, so that if you try and go in a straight line, be near something sort of massive, your straight line will be curved one. Okay, and this is the way that they've always sort of presented it to us, and I'll give a little video.
Relativity, the explanation for gravity is that matter bends space. And so you put mass in a place in space, it warps space-time, and objects are not feeling a force of gravity, they're just following the natural curvature. And so this is a sheet of Lycra. Where do you get this? This is my old bike shorts. No, there's literally a spandex.com. You can get a sheet like this if you buy the sale stuff, so you don't care what it looks like, right? For like $20, maybe less, depending on the sale. And so you put matter and it warps space-time. And so if I have another object, it also warps space-time. They feel that and they're attracted to each other. And so that's Einstein's picture of gravity. Objects warp space-time, feel that curvature, and move accordingly. And if you have more mass,
You're right there. On that.
oh, if you have more mass, it's going to bend space-time more. And so if you have objects here, they are going to respond to that, right? And so you put something there, now it's attracted. Now, in reality, that big mass would feel the warping of space-time by the marble too, right? It would move a little bit, but we usually ignore that. You know, the Earth makes the sun move a little bit, but it's so small you can ignore it. The moon makes the Earth kind of wobble around a point 3/4 of the way from the center of the Earth. We usually don't account for that when we're looking at satellite motion. Well, instead of just letting go of one, what if I give it a sideways push? Now it orbits. Now it's losing energy, which wouldn't happen in the solar system, right? Not noticeably. There's some perturbations from other planets and things, but this one does lose energy and spirals in. If I don't push it as hard, it will do an ellipse for a while anyway. And
So, does anyone see a problem with this? Okay. Well, the problem I see is that model includes dropity. Yeah. The thing is, you know, the warping of space or space-time, yeah, is literally just showing a moving object where to go, but it doesn't actually move the object. Yeah, because Einstein got rid of this mysterious force. Yeah, there's no force now. Yeah, so literally that object, the little marble on this diagram. Yeah, if you just okay, we'll do a little scenario. All right, if we had that trampoline thing, okay, exact same trampoline thing, and we had it in a weightless environment. Not that one exists, but you know, we'll assume a weightless environment. Okay. Well, the bowling ball or whatever it is in the middle, well, we can't have that because it wouldn't make a depression. There'd be nothing there to pull it down, right? Right? For crying out loud. Anyway, right? So there'd be nothing there to pull it down, so it wouldn't make an impression in the trampoline. So you'd have to pull it down from the middle and make a dip. Okay? So if you put the marble in this weightless environment, you put the marble on the edge of the dip, it would stay there because there's nothing to say. There's nothing in that model to say what would make that ball move. Does everybody get that? Am I making? Yeah. So that's the total the reason why that model doesn't work. Yeah. Even in sort of free space with this huge Earth, right? This model only works if something is already moving, and it will follow a curved path. Yeah, if you just place something there, it won't actually move.
Long before the theory of gravity was a glimmer in Newton's imagination, the natural physics of density and buoyancy already perfectly explained why apples fall down. Quite simply, objects fall or rise based on their relative density to the medium surrounding them. Apples fall because they are denser than the air, while helium balloons rise because they are lighter. No gravity necessary. This is why raindrops fall down through the air and air bubbles rise up through water. Everything seeks its relative density and rises or falls until settling accordingly. This is why a tiny pebble sinks to the bottom of the ocean, but gigantic cruise ships and aircraft carriers stay afloat on the surface, because even though a pebble is so small, its mass relative to its volume, its density, is more than water, so it sinks. And even though a cruise ship is so large, its mass relative to its volume is less than water, so it floats. If Newton's apple had landed in a puddle instead of on his head, he would have seen the apple only fell through the air because it was denser than the air, but then floated on top of the water because it was less dense than water. Have you ever noticed how it's easier to stay afloat with your lungs full of air than it is when they're empty? Submarines float on the surface when their ballast tanks are filled with air, but when the vents are opened and seawater floods in, they begin to sink as the submarine's density becomes greater than water. Depending what depth they wish to dive, sailors simply adjust the ratio of air and water in their tanks, and when ready to resurface, they blow compressed air into the tanks, forcing the seawater out, lowering the density, and thus causing them to rise back to the surface. We can also prove this fact of relative density by filling a balloon with approximately half helium and half air. Since helium is lighter than the oxygen, nitrogen, and other gases that compose the air around us, filling a balloon with just the right amount of helium to compensate for and balance out the density of the plastic results in a gravity-defying, levitating balloon at equilibrium that neither rises nor falls. Astronomers claim to have measured all the planets' distances, shapes, orbits, weights, relative positions, and times of revolution, all based on the law of gravitation, and without gravity, their entire cosmology folds under its own weight. Without gravity, people cannot stand upside down on a ball Earth. Without gravity, the Earth and planets cannot be revolving around the Sun. Without Newtonian gravitation, Einsteinian relativity, Copernican heliocentricity, and the entire Big Bang ball Earth mythos cannot exist and falls to pieces. Gravity, both metaphorically and quite literally, just does not hold any water, not as a sound theory of cosmology, and not as a law supposedly responsible for holding in the world's oceans.
Remember when I learned in school about gravity? It was so cool. I had a teacher that knew it all. She taught me how water could stick to a ball, how buildings stick to the underside of a ball that spins like a carousel ride. Man, it all sounded crazy to me, but I love learning about gravity. I couldn't wait to tell my dad about the amazing day that I had. He picked me up, I was bursting with pride. He opened up the door and I jumped inside. He smiled at me and said, "How was your day?" I said, "Dad, I was blown away. I learned about this magical thing, but it's kinda got my head in the spin. I learned about this Newton guy. When an apple fell on his head, he surmised that there must be a force that's pulling it down, and everything's being sucked to the ground. A force that sticks us all to this ball, the people, the buildings, the oceans, and all. So it was written in history. Newton had discovered gravity." Well, he just looked at me and said, "Don't believe in gravity. Don't believe in fantasy. Don't believe, 'cause the theory's all it is. It's never been proven, but they teach it to the kids." Well, my dad felt a little bit sad for me when I mentioned that word gravity. He said, Have a little independent thought. Question what you've just been taught. I mean, how the hell can a ball that spins make a force so strong that sucks everything in? Yet birds and insects fly unaffected. Gravity must be so selective. Think about it logically, 'cause that don't make no sense to me. You gotta question all those preachers preach, question all those teachers teach. You see, gravity is just a bunch of bull. That Newton guy's just a lying fool. These guys like Newton shouldn't be trusted. Their free Masonic lies have been busted. In fact, my boy, it's density, and that's why things fall down, you see. An object always falls to the ground if it's heavier than the air that surrounds. If it's lighter than air, then it'll rise. It'll keep on floating up to the skies. That's what's known as buoyancy, and that makes more sense than gravity. So let me tell you one more time, boy. Don't believe in gravity. Don't believe in fantasy. Don't believe 'cause the theory's all it is. It's never been proven, but they teach it to the kids. He said, "I'm sorry, son, for bursting your bubble, but that kind of thinking can get you in trouble. These theories they try to put in your head, it's all just pseudoscience," he said. "They'll have you believing in all kinds of crap. That gravity nonsense belongs in the trash. Believe me when I say to you, there ain't no gravity, and that's the truth." Well, my daddy made me think that day. He made me think in a different way. I did some thinking for myself. I put that theory back on the shelf. That gravity crap is indoctrination, not truthful, trusted information. People need to wake up and see there ain't no such thing as gravity. You let me hear you sing it one more time now. Don't believe in gravity. Don't believe in fantasy. The theory's all it is. It's never been proven, but they teach it to the kids. One more time now. Don't believe in gravity. Don't believe in fantasy. Don't believe 'cause the theory's all it is. It's never been proven, but they teach it to the kids.
The earth is flat.